Welcome to the Calm Analytics channel. I'm Boris Tizenghausen. It's May 22nd, and here are the top news stories at this moment. Let's start with some extreme cringe about artificial intelligence in the service of evil. Well, maybe some of you have already started using ChatGPT or perhaps other services, but in Russia they've decided to take a different approach. The authorities in the Rostov region have created videos using artificial intelligence about the dangers of mobile internet and about how dangerous it is to attend rallies. This is just insane. I'm going to show you these videos now, and by the way, this is not a joke, it's been verified. The Department of Information Policy of the Rostov region confirmed that they were the ones who created these videos to inform the public, primarily targeting young people. Take a look at the first video.
Мы привыкли к удобствам, которые дает интернет, и даже не замечаем их. Без интернета мы как без рук.
Интернета нет. Кажется, я заблудился.
Опять интернет отключили. Да что ж такое?
Но мы не задумываемся, что интернет может быть опасен.
Мобильный интернет отключают для вашей безопасности. Помните об этом.
What do you think about that? Mobile internet is blowing up some courtyards, but we don't stop to think that mobile internet can actually be dangerous. It's not mobile internet that's dangerous. What's dangerous is your deranged underground Kremlin commander who started the war against Ukraine. That's who will destroy the Russian Federation. But you really had to rack your brains to come up with something like that. There's another video from these same creative geniuses. Take a look. Yes, we can change the world without going out into the streets. We've heard it, we've seen it. We can change the world without opening our mouths, without criticizing the authorities. Sure, we believe that. I get the feeling that the script was probably written by Naryshkin and Medvedev after dosing themselves with some kind of magic dust. Orwell is just nervously smoking on the sidelines after these videos. You know, the most interesting thing is that they actually made these videos for young people, so that young people would react to them. What do you think? Will they manage to get their mothballed idea across to the youth? With these kinds of videos, it feels like they're all made by young people on the outside. But on the inside, they're very, very old, aging information lackeys serving the Kremlin like some kind of Komsomol members frozen in amber. And now we move on to some great news from the warriors of the Special Operations Center, the Security Service of Ukraine, the Service of God, as we call it here. The headquarters of the Russian FSB operatives in the occupied part of the Kherson region has been struck. Thanks to this single operation alone, Russian losses amounted to about 100 occupiers, FSB operatives killed and wounded. The most effective sanctions in the world. Whiz, and just like that, 100 are no longer alive. FSB operatives. Pay attention, I'm going to show you a video now. You'll see the power of the warhead on our Ukrainian drones that attack this headquarters. The whole building actually jumps. Well, the building jumps, and let's just say our drones are changing the physical state of the Russian FSB operatives. Watch this video.
Повітряна тривога, лети до Таганрога, дістань до Волгограда, Саратов потруси, нехай гримить в Тамбові, Рязані та Ростові, як до Москви дістанешся, то нахуй рознеси. Дехто каже, що це гріх і так не треба, гнів та розпач можуть карму зіпсувать. Бачу сльози, чути стогін аж до неба, за це все к***и мають поздихать. Повітряна тривога, лети до Таганрога, влупи як слід Вороніж і Курськом закуси, Єлабугу поштрикай, Новгород великий, як до Москви дістанешся, то нахуй рознеси.
Powerful. Even if, after the first strike, the stunned FSB agents were crawling around the floors, the subsequent strikes simply left them no chance. And let me remind you, Putin still plans to capture Donbass by the end of the summer. He hasn't managed to capture it in 4 years, but now he plans to do it in 3 months. Well, obviously. By the way, friends, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. You can do it right now. It's important. We're fighting against Putin's propaganda, so make sure to subscribe. And of course, let me remind you, for those who subscribe, your hair becomes soft and silky. And then Bloomberg comes out with news on the topic, on that very subject, whether Putin will capture Donbass or not. Putin wants to end the war by the end of the year, but only on terms that can be sold to the population of the Russian Federation. As a victory, Bloomberg writes, among such terms is the complete capture of Donbass, a broad security agreement with Europe that would in effect recognize the occupied territories as belonging to Russia. According to Bloomberg, concern is growing among the Russian elite due to the failure of the spring offensive and the regular strikes by Ukrainian drones. And not just because of that, the Russian economy has also come off the rails. At the same time, Ukraine and its allies are increasingly confident that the Russian invasion is running out of steam. Kyiv is stabilizing the front line, it's true, and holding back Moscow's spring offensive. And I'll say more, Ukraine is already eliminating more Russian bio-waste than Russia can recruit. And as for the strikes on oil refineries, our fighters have really picked up an excellent pace there. So when a dictator is forced to think about how to present the outcome to the public, how to wrap it up as a victory, that's no longer a victory. That's defeat PR management. Victors don't look for narratives. True winners dictate the terms, and Putin is clearly not a winner. And of course, Medvedev showed up right on cue this Friday. Medvedev is always there. Medvedev declared that the demise of Ukraine is inevitable from a historical perspective. Seriously, what does that mean today? If it's Friday today, then the demise of Finland is at least 0.7, and Medvedev's liver is also inevitably doomed from a historical perspective. By the way, Medvedev says what Putin thinks but cannot or is afraid to say out loud. What's on Putin's mind is on Medvedev's tongue. That is the very purpose of his existence. Medvedev is a classic, a textbook example of a court jester. At the courts of medieval Europe, the jester occupied such a unique niche, the only person allowed to say something impermissible. That is, the king cannot threaten a neighbor, cannot threaten to destroy a neighboring kingdom. That would be a casus belli, a diplomatic scandal, personal responsibility. But the jester can. The jester doesn't count. The jester is in a way official but not serious. At the same time, everyone at court understood perfectly well that the jester voiced what the king would like to say but could not. This was called the privilege of folly. And of course it was skillfully used. The historical irony is that the court jester was always very witty, which cannot be said about the bear. Here everything is sad. Dr. Evil from AliExpress is sloppily playing his role and threatens in such a way that he constantly becomes a laughingstock himself. And then Lukashenko and Putin connected via video conference after the nuclear exercises. During the joint nuclear forces training. This was reported by the press services of Lukashenko and Putin. Listen, what do they even say to each other? So the exercises are taking place and they connect via this conference call. What do they actually say to each other? It's interesting. When they're left one-on-one. So will you help attack Ukraine? Are you kidding? They'll slice me up into chips over there. Ah, well, see you then. All right, bye-bye. What do they even talk about, really? By the way, Lukashenko, with all his recent games with nuclear exercises and some more threats, I mean, Lukashenko could just be left without fuel in one fell swoop. Just like that, in one go. That would be a catastrophe for him. He only has 2 oil refineries in all of Belarus. If he doesn't turn off the relays that guide Russian shaheds and doesn't stop, let's say, his shamanic dances near the border, then I think those 2 refineries could just shut down in an instant. Moreover, the distance from the border with Ukraine to the Moser oil refinery is less than 40 kilometers. So, Lukashenko, keep clucking away with Putin over video calls. Some kind of elderly cam girls, right? Whatever games they're playing there. By the way, when I say that things will only get worse for Russians, I'm not just saying that for no reason. I'm a pretty tedious guy, so I always have the numbers. Let's take, for example, those same strikes on the refineries. If in the first year of the war there were no attacks on refineries, then in 2023 there were already 4. In 2024 there were 34. In 2025 there were already 88. And in just the first 4 months of this year, Ukrainian drones have already struck oil refineries 33 times. And it's not just the number of strikes, but also their quality. The nature of the strikes is different. If before a single drone could reach a refinery, now there can be several waves. They hit the refineries until they are completely shut down, and at the same time, they also disable air defense systems. At the same time, there are practically no large refineries left in Russia, large meaning with a capacity of 10 million or more, tons and above, which previously had not been attacked by Ukraine. The only two such refineries are beyond the Urals, the Omsk and Angarsk refineries, but I think they'll get to them as well. And let's be honest, there haven't been such massive raids on Moscow. I think one more such raid and Muscovites will start packing their bags for safer regions. But it's important to note that for now there are still safer regions. Meanwhile, Ukraine and Ukrainians are showing the whole world that it's possible to nullify Russia's spring offensive and fight the enemy, even if they're much bigger than you. In every episode, we have an important fundraiser for Ukraine's defense forces. Today, we are continuing to raise funds for drones and charging stations for the 37th Marine Brigade, which is defending the Donetsk direction. The soldiers have recorded a video message for you. Please take a look.
Мене звати тату Аня. Я громадянка Бельгія. Я служу у складу 37-ї бригади морської піхоти. Звертаюся до Борис Тізан-Озан та його підписників.
Ми є військовослужбовцями 37-ї окремої бригади морської піхоти зенітно-ракетно-артилерійського дивізіону. Наразі маємо потребу у зенітних дронах у кількості 100 одиниць. Просимо про допомогу у Бориса Тізенхаузена.
Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
In this video, Anya Anatatu. She is Belgian and serves as a UAV operator in the 37th Separate Marine Brigade. Anya is very strong. Despite having only one leg and using a prosthesis, she successfully completes combat missions and inspires many with her vitality. Let's help Anya. Let's help our brave Marines from the 37th Brigade. We have just a little bit left to fully fund this campaign. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. There are mono, private, and PayPal options for those who want to help from abroad. If you're watching on another channel, there's always a QR code in the corner that leads to the fundraiser. And thank you so much, friends. In every episode, I say this on behalf of myself and the hundreds of our soldiers whom you've already helped. Together, we are a great force. Remember that. And now let's talk a bit about cynicism. Sometimes it happens that from good, bright, strong people, we have to move on to other categories. An official representative of the United States will visit the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum for the first time in several years. This year, the head of the U.S. Federal Commission on Fine Arts, Rodney Mims-Cook, will come to St. Petersburg, the head of fine arts. Well, speaking of cynicism, you know what thought crossed my mind? Could it be that, especially after the strikes on Moscow and the arrivals in St. Petersburg and Ust-Luga, they specifically invite an American to this forum so that Ukraine doesn't terrorize the forum with drones, so that the guests don't scatter? And at this forum, most likely Putin will be there too. So, in other words, they plan to use the Americans as a kind of air defense system. That's the thought that came to my mind. But then, there are even more questions for the American side. How clueless do you have to be to attend such events? And now news from the Crimean partisans. Our dear Crimean partisans are happy to share information with us directly from the occupied peninsula. Let me remind you, the Crimean partisans are a broad network of people on the peninsula and beyond who are bringing Ukraine's victory closer. And here is some news from them. They are always extremely interesting. Serious problems with gasoline have started in occupied Crimea. Very serious problems. First of all, gasoline has disappeared from some gas stations. Once again, there are restrictions in place, no more than 20 liters per person. Diesel fuel is being sold by coupons and the price keeps rising. And why is that? Because of the complex strikes on occupied Crimea, strikes on major oil depots like the one in Feodosia, for example, which burned out completely. It was on fire for a week and they hit it several times, so it burned down entirely. They knocked out key storage facilities. Previously, they used to bring it across the ferry, unload it into these huge storage tanks. It was stored there and then distributed throughout occupied Crimea, including to the Russian military, who have simply militarized Crimea. Now, there is no oil depot. Where can they unload it? They have to distribute the fuel directly from the trucks to whoever needs it. So now bringing in new fuel has become a big problem, as it turns out. The ferry service across the Kerch Strait has been practically destroyed. Recently, they finished off the remaining ferries. The Crimean bridge technically still exists, and there is a railway on it, but the occupiers do not transport fuel across the Crimean bridge. It's forbidden because it's too obvious a target, too great a risk. God forbid something hits that train, and that's the end of Putin's fetishized concrete symbol. So there was only one route left. That's the land route along the Sea of Azov through Melitopol and Berdyansk. But now this road is within range of Ukrainian drones, and fuel convoys and tankers are turning into targets. Recently, Russians were saying somewhere in chats, let's disguise the tankers as trucks, we'll cover them with tarps. Thank you. That is, thank you very much. Now, Ukrainian drones will also be hitting trucks. Thanks for the tip. Occupied Crimea has simply ended up in a logistical trap. Muscovites and people from St. Petersburg won't be going to Crimea this year. Yes, I think they won't go to Anapa either. So where are they even going to go now? Back in my childhood, when Sevastopol was not yet occupied, you could immediately spot Muscovites on the beach. So we locals would spend all day on that beach from morning till night, lying there like grilled shrimp on the pier from dawn to dusk, all tanned brown, while the Muscovites were as white as milk, or bright red. If it was already their second day, they would get sunburned, and you could easily recognize them by their distinctive accent, that drawn-out "ah" sound. Like, boy, where can you find shell coins around here? That's how they spoke, and then somehow that accent disappeared. I always thought that Muscovites made up this way of pronouncing A just to give themselves some kind of status, so that everyone would know they were from Moscow. Over time, this A pronunciation just disappeared. Europe was concerned that Trump would launch a nuclear strike against Iran, which would give the Russian Federation an excuse to carry out a nuclear strike on Ukraine. Reuters reports this, citing its sources. A European diplomat in Washington said that when on April 7th Trump warned Iran, remember, he wrote then, an entire civilization will perish tonight, the US government was actually searching for answers about what was happening. And the governments of European countries were also trying to figure out what Donald Trump meant. Was he planning to launch a nuclear strike? Well, how else can you explain the statement that an entire civilization will perish tonight? At that time, Europe and Asia too, I think, the whole world was worried about a strike on Iran, a nuclear strike. And after that, Russia could have said, well, if he's striking, then that means we can too. European governments immediately sought clarification through the traditional channel via the State Department, but there they received a troubling response. They did not know what Trump meant or what actions might follow his words. The scariest thing about this story isn't that Trump could have used nuclear weapons. He does have that authority. The scariest thing is that the State Department didn't know. The State Department didn't know what Trump meant. Nuclear deterrence operates on one fundamental principle: predictability. That is, the adversary must clearly understand where the red line is, what will happen if it is crossed, and what every word of an official means. Trump simply destroys this principle, and apparently he even sees it as an advantage that he does so. Unpredictability as a tool of pressure. That's been his favorite negotiation tactic since his pre-presidential days in New York real estate. Well, this is the fundamental problem with Trump, which he doesn't consider a problem at all. He doesn't understand that his words are not just words. The words of the President of the United States are a physical reality. They are a physical threat. These words move fleets, they scramble fighter jets, they start wars, they trigger readiness protocols. So when Trump says that civilization will perish tonight, somewhere people might actually believe it and start pressing buttons too. Meanwhile, in Russia, the series of mysterious deaths of top managers, bankers, and major businessmen connected to the oil sector and the regime's financial flows continues. Just a couple of days ago, there was yet another mysterious death, that of Russian billionaire Mikhail Smirnov. 2 days ago, 53-year-old billionaire Mikhail Smirnov, co-owner of the Baltic Fuel Company, died in a car accident. This company was engaged in the export of petroleum products. According to the official version, Smirnov was riding a motorcycle and collided with a car that was allegedly driving in the oncoming lane. There were no witnesses to the accident. The businessman died at the scene before the ambulance arrived. But do you know what's most interesting about this whole story? Shortly before his death, Smirnov withdrew from all his companies as a founder and left all his positions. The assets and management were transferred to structures connected with the Bank St. Petersburg and the circle of Valentina Matvienko. Can you imagine what a coincidence that is? This is the kind of genre that has developed in modern Russia since the beginning of the war. Dozens of top managers connected to oil, gas, and financial flows have suddenly fallen out of windows, drowned in bathtubs, or suddenly managed to hang themselves. Moreover, some of them rewrote all their assets to third parties right before their deaths. The investigation, as a rule, is closed quickly, the heirs remain silent, and the assets end up in the right hands. This is an old Russian tradition, a very old one, and it even has a name, smuta, turmoil. As long as the central authority is strong, in this case, if we're talking about the Russian Federation, this central authority acted as the arbiter. As soon as it weakens, as soon as it gets bogged down in a senseless war, there is no arbiter. That's it. Each clan starts to resolve issues on its own. In exactly the same way, when the Muscovite Tsardom entered the time of troubles at the beginning of the 17th century, the boyar clans began to destroy each other in the struggle for the assets of the weakening state. The same thing is happening in the Russian Federation now. And as I traditionally repeat, the worst times for Russia are still ahead. Everything is just beginning. And you, my friends, take care of yourselves, take care of your loved ones. Subscribe to this channel, don't forget. And I ask you very much, let's help Anya from the 37th Brigade of our glorious Marines. The link to the fundraiser is in the description of this video. Our help, yours and mine, is extremely necessary for them right now. Have a peaceful day, everyone, and glory to Ukraine.